Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Blade Devil review. In this video, I will cover what Blade Devil is, the characters, the chapters, this is your formal spoiler warning, get out now if you have not read it, the additions to the book, other works from the creator, my thoughts, plus my opinions and recommendations, and finally, a conclusion. So what is Blade Devil? Blade Devil is the work of Raging Golden Eagle and Sick Fox Studios. Raging Golden Eagle is here, pixelated of course, so as to not reveal what he really looks like, just to give you an idea, and this is how thick the book is that he's holding in his hand. And as for the development of this, eventually he got all these boxes, and it is an individual project, so he had to ship things out himself. Some links to his channels include his YouTube link, his Pixiv link, and his Twitter link. Go give him a follow if you want to find out more about his work. Now the characters. In Ghost of the Past, which is the primary chapter of the story, we are introduced to Ashara and Kajirok. Kajirok is the Dimian symbiote that lives in Ashara's left eye, and Ashara is our central protagonist. The other relevant characters from Ghost of the Past include what appears to be the central villain of the story, Iuna, the Witch of the Wastes. As for the second chapter, Blade Devil Haunted, once again our central focus is on Ashara and Kajirok, and the main antagonist of this section is Scorpulon. At the very least, I believe it is Scorpulon, considering it is the only thing that roughly approximates what is seen in the bestiary. Chapter 3 involves the Deadly Detour. Stepping away from Ashara, we see Orlan, Nistron, and Shoran. And finally, the characters for Blade Devil Chapter 4 family are Zara and Ninoa. So let's start with the chapters. Ghost from the Past is clearly the longest chapter, as it revolves around the majority of the story. It begins with Ashara mercy killing a poor guy, and we learn about this thing called corruption. And corruption seems to be what is being spread by the Witch of the Wastes, Iuna. Afterwards, Ashara meets up with some hunters. Most likely these are Orlan, Nistron, and Shoran, although we are never formally given a name by these characters in this chapter, but rather we get their names later in the story. They talk about how there are bandits and that there's corruption, and the hunters, the guys in the masks, are, in a sense, the protectors of the world. They are the reason that there are people who can live in towns and sleep peacefully, whereas they are out there fighting the good fight to protect the people. After Ashara has her little run-in with the hunters, she then makes it over to Strin, which is the gateway to the northern front. In essence, it's your fantasy town that you'll see in many fantasy stories. We learn about the Decay Compass, which they are using to track decay, and seems to be how they are avoiding confrontation with Iuna. As a matter of fact, Ashara and Kajirok both agree that the goal is to evade Iuna, as, according to them, as their quarry grows stronger, Ashara and Kajirok grow weaker. In addition to this, they have the communication slate, which is, in a sense, a smartphone. Personally, I'm not too big on smartphones in fictional stories, or something approximating a smartphone, as it doesn't seem too fitting with this time period. But if they need ways to communicate, I'm all for that. It makes things easier. In addition, we also have the dimensional barrier, something that is not brought up currently in the story, but I'm assuming will be brought up later in future volumes. It even points out that Kajirok even tells Ashara that she has no idea what it does. Although, according to Ashara, it is a dimensional barrier. It's supposed to be like a magic shield, but better. Other characters introduced to in this series, in this location, is Beryl Shota. Not really given a name, but that is what he's called on the Indigogo page. He's looking for someone who took his parents, and Ashara says, I'm going to go out after this, and we are going to find your parents. Strange little fact is that Ashara seems to be into this kid, as on page 12, she even goes as far as to say, oh my, he's so cute, with 3 O's. And later on, even comments on him being a keeper when he grows up. We're then introduced to the hunters again, who are currently in the waste, and they're seeing that corruption is destroying the world, and that they need to stay alert, and that they're looking for whatever the heck is causing the corruption. They want to get reinforcements, however, they don't want to risk lives needlessly, so they are debating doing so at the current moment. In addition, now that Ashara is a bit unsure of what's going on, she decides to pull out some cards, and reveals one. We don't actually see what the cards look like, but she pulls them out. They have a little eye on them. And right as she figures out what it is, a man wearing red, with his stomach and hair exposed, says that Siren is under attack. and there's an army of monsters, and a revenant, of course. At first, Ashara thinks that the monsters are running away from the revenant, but then it's revealed that they're secretly all working together in unison. Ashara and Kajirok then begin their fight, telling Barrel Shutter to go hide in a barrel, funny enough. The fight begins, and we're introduced to Ashara being a badass, being able to take down multiple of these enemies with her sword. We don't know what the sword is called yet, but we will find out eventually. Barrel Shutter is even shocked at how strong Ashara is. At the same time, the cavalry arrives with other warriors, such as a man who appears to be riding a dinosaur, a green-haired witch lady, a man with a gun, and multiple other warriors. We also find out that Kajirok here is actually inside Ashara's eye, and when he needs to feed, he will come out of her eye and feed on the enemy. Although he claims that the corrupted does not taste very good. Kajirok, in a sense, is a symbiote, a demon symbiote, and the deal that he has with Ashara is that if they ever run out of mana, Ashara will be the food for Kajirok. And the deal, however, is that insofar the two of them are together, Ashara can't die, which in of itself is a really cool idea. From here, we find out about her weapons. The Blood Rose, which is that thing on her chest that Ashara seems to have with her. From what I could tell, it is an infinite inventory space, or at the very least, a lot of inventory space that is aligned and limited based on her blood, and can be used in more ways as soon as she gets more mana. And her Ray of Dawn, which is a shape-shifting sword that can take on any form. For the time being, we only see it as a sword, and I am very curious as to how it is going to appear in future parts, in future volumes. And we find out that when we see the Revenant, this man looks terrifying. If you've ever seen the movie The Revenant, just imagine that guy, but with dark red. Obviously, I'm not going to show it because I want you to actually read the book, because it's really good. But it just looks like a really scary version of that man from The Revenant, except red, with a really cool weapon called the Earth's Dragon Roar. It is an artifact powered by dragon souls, and it emits shockwaves powerful enough to bring down buildings. That's a pretty powerful enemy. Ashara then fights the Revenant, and realizes the Revenant is way too strong. He's moving too quickly. Luckily for them, Narzod, the Astrum clan Grand Master, along with his cavalry and his men, show up and help fight the monsters. The monsters, the guards, and Ashara, the tribe, the guards, and Ashara work together to fight the monsters. However, Ashara finds out that she's not good enough to defeat the Revenant for the time being. We're also introduced to this green-haired witch lady who makes a joke about not wearing a helmet because she needs her glasses to read. And like I said, I'm very intrigued about who this character is. I want to find out more about this character as well. We also find out that Barrel Shutter uses a sword and starts fighting monsters himself. While he's not as powerful as any of the hunters, at the very least from what can be seen, he is reliable and perceptive of his opponents, being able to catch one of them off guard and manages to kill him by stabbing them with the sword. Ashara then continues her fight and realizes that she's not strong enough, managing to get cut open pretty gruesomely. So we get a flashback where we see her training with a fox boy and a green-haired kid against this grown man who appears to be an elf considering his ears, called Takeshi. And we find out that Ashara does not like being saved by people, but rather wants to do the fighting herself because she thinks she can take care of herself. However, as Takeshi notes, that Ashara is not physically strong enough to defeat him in a one-on-one fight, so she needs to rely on others. That is the big lesson they're trying to teach him. From here, Ashara completes her deal with Kaj and decides to not complete her deal. From there, Ashara and Kaj work together, and Kaj, using her mana, turns her into the Blade Double, which in a sense can be seen as the Summon Skull, but Rule 63. And it's even it's even insinuated that it's gruesome, the actual transformation, and that that the person who has seen her in the form before has just seen the transformation for the first time. Outside of the town, we get to see the three men again, the three hunters. So we see Orlan, Nistan, and Shoran, and they encounter this person called the Witch of the Waste, and we see that she can corrupt people. We then flash back to Ashara's childhood, wherein we find out that she and Iuna were once friends, or at the very least that Iuna cares for her, going so far as to say, "Don't worry, no matter what anyone else says, I'll always love you," while comforting a crying Ashara. We also learn the fact that Ashara has no magical aptitude. From here, we see the three hunters, and they meet up with Iuna, and their first statement is, "If we can kill her, we can end the corruption." However, Iuna, being the central antagonist of the story, most likely does not lose. We do not actually see how this confrontation ends, in the same way that we don't see the rest of the fight between Ashara and the Revenant. It cuts off here. We then get to Chapter 2, Haunted, which for a split second I thought was going to be a continuation. However, it seems to be a side story, most likely taking place before the events of the main chapter, seemingly being a way to introduce Ashara as a more likable character away from the battle. Most likely this is an earlier part of the story, simply because she does not appear injured and is more, I would say, more happy in the context of this section. We start off with her sleeping in the church, only to be attacked by the Scorpulon. Once again, I'm not actually sure if it is the Scorpulon. However, it appears to be the Scorpulon simply because there is no other monster in the bestiary that aligns with the appearance of the Scorpulon, or at the very least the monster in the context of the chapter. She cuts its head off, but it manages to survive. From there, we see her use the decay compass to track down where they need to go. She finds a wet cave, but manages to once again be interrupted by the Scorpulon. A few hours later, she takes a bath, but the Scorpulon attacks her while she's in the bath. Thankfully, she had her sword on her the whole time, and manages to cut it in half. However, that still doesn't kill her, and it reveals a green skeleton, which she thinks is the host for the time being. Afterwards, she demonstrates her survival skills. She digs a hole using her strength. She even makes what appears to be a makeshift grill using sticks and the hole. She's also talking about covering her basic food groups because she is still human to my knowledge, or at the very least needs to eat like a human. She also sets up multiple traps to catch a bunny, maybe a chicken, and even starts a fire. She also burns the bones of the green skeleton that she sees inside. Even Kaj makes a joke saying that it could also be intended to blow up, although Ashara does not think it is possible. She then checks on her traps and finds that none of them are working anymore. In fact, they've been destroyed. She even goes on to exclaim, "My masterpiece!" as she is sick and tired of how the Scorpulon is treating her items. From there, she finds a watchtower, which she seemingly already knew existed, only to find everyone inside is dead, and the only thing left that's edible is a box of rations. She and Kajirok then point out the fact that this enemy, the Scorpulon, knows her weaknesses and is trying to tire her out so that she'll eventually surrender. They then speculate that the monster is not actually tracking them, but rather where they are going. So Ashara decides to take a more scenic route. At first, she finds a tree to get some edible fruit, only for the fruit to be destroyed and on the floor. And from there, she finds a settlement with men, noting the fact that they're starting to become corrupted. The Scorpulon then shows up and murders one of the men. The corruption takes over these men, and they begin to attack Ashara as they are no longer reasonable and rather corrupted. She kills a large chunk of them, including the boss. Then the boss's men start attacking her, saying, "Get away from the boss." The person to kill Ashara gets to be the boss. But Ashara, being a bit more than human, manages to be too much for these men and overwhelms them with her superior tactics and swordsmanship. The Scorpulon then interrupts again, killing more men, but Ashara manages to throw her sword and pierces the Scorpulon, killing it, and finds the dead bone. Then the skeleton actually blows up, taking both the body, the life, and the soul with it, meaning that Kajirok's original hypothesis of it is possible for the bones to explode was correct. Ashara then feeds Kajirok the souls of the remaining survivors before they become corrupted. Afterwards, we get the Deadly Detour, which seems to be an introduction to the hunters that Ashara spent time with back in Chapter 1. Not too much happens in this. I could actually very easily summarize it as 3 badass dudes fight a bunch of monsters, and you'd probably lose nothing. But that would be, how should I say, disingenuous. It begins with Orlan fighting this dinosaur-looking guy. I mean, actually a dinosaur. You can even see it right here. And from there, this guy called Marlon says, now that he's seen him, he challenges him. Orlan and Marius and Orlan then have their big fight, wherein Orlan uses what is called the Divine Messenger to kill Marius. He then teams up with Niston and Shoran, 2 people working with Marius, and they trio fight an enemy called the Aquapede. Once more, I'm not actually sure if it is the Aquapede, which you can see on the left picture there. It's the black thing. However, it is the closest thing that matches up with the bestiary. It's not exact, which is why I'm hesitant to call it the Aquapede, but seeing as there's no other name for any enemy of this caliber, that is the best name I can come up with, so that is what I will call it for the sake of this review. They defeat the Aquapede because they're super badass, and they get an emergency recall saying to return to Magon immediately. They investigate the locations, and this is how they end up meeting Ashara later in the story, and they end up encountering the Witch of the Wastes. On the bottom right corner, I said that they are at Strin, but that is incorrect. They are meant to be in Magon. The truth is that this is probably the weakest section of the book. In fact, on future reads, I decided to completely skip this and move on to Chapter 4, Family. Family is rather short here. It begins with Ninoa running away from monsters, almost to the point where she accepts her death, but she falls to the floor and finds a building, well, ruins. Inside those ruins, she meets a girl called Zara, who has blue hair and is in chains. I would show images of Zara, however, outside of the image of Zara shown in the character introduction, I do not believe that there is any image of Zara that I can post on YouTube and not be taken down for. From there, Zara frees... My bad. Ninoa frees Zara, and the 2 of them fight this giant eye monster. Well, this giant monster that looks like a skull with an eye on it. This monster is not in the bestiary to my knowledge, so I have no idea what to actually call it. Zara and Ninoa take it down, and it begins to turn into dust. However, they escape and realize that they're surrounded by more monsters. Zara's reaction to this is that this is going to take all day. Meanwhile, Ninoa, the little one with brown hair, claims that they are doomed. And that is the end of Volume 1 of Blade Devil. Some additions and the other works. What I ordered the Titty Tentacle 3-book combo, and it's not a misspelling of the word titty, that's actually how it is spelled on the Indigogo pack campaign. It was $75, you receive 3 copies of the graphic novel, and they all have different covers. I like the snarkiness here. Hero says, 1 for your shelf, 1 for your private collection, and 1 for your alone time. I don't like the insinuation that you're just giving me with the alone time, but it's pretty funny. So what comes in here? It comes with a monster gallery, a fan art gallery, a legendary founders page, a picture of Ashara and Zara in a hot spring naked. I will not be showing those, as I do want you to purchase the book. It's really good. Other works from Sig Fox Studios include Void Carver, which is the story of Zara and Ninoa, Blade Devil Volume 2, which seems to be slated to come out at least in a year, and Let's in the World, his Pixiv webcomic series that I have finally caught up with. Let's in the World is a story of a doomsday cult who has misadventures, going to fight other cultists, and even seeing Franz Ferdinand from World War I. And this is a bit of a question I had. When I was reading Blade Devil, I thought that the other chapters with Ninoa and Zara, along with the chapters of Nistan, Orlan, and Shoran, were supposed to be different perspectives. If that is the case, and they are different perspectives, and eventually they all meet up, then I am very down and interested to read in Blade Devil 2. However, if what appears to be, as said in the on the picture on the right hand side, that Void Carver is its own story, then I might just switch over to Void Carver. The reason I'll do that is because, and this is my biggest issue with Blade Devil, that the other characters, with the exception of the 3 hunters, were more interesting to me. And that is a big issue that I had with Blade Devil. So let's go into my own thoughts and opinions and recommendations. For my total score, I give it a 78.333% or a C+. How did I get that score? The art, 9 out of 10. Super good art. Was it perfect? No. But, did I like it? In fact, mostly, the majority of the reason as to why I purchased Blade Devil were twofold. Reason number one, I saw the art and I was immediately intrigued. And number two, I've been watching Raging Golden Eagle since I was in high school. You know, his content is genuinely entertaining, genuinely funny. He manages to make the news of the world really interesting, to me, at the very least. The story is an 8 out of 10. Now, I'm taking the story as a whole, so if it was just Blade Devil, it'd probably go down, but because of, I think Void Carver was just such a good story in addition to Blade Devil, it added to it. As for the characters that I did not count were Orlan, Nistan, and Shoran, as they would lower the score by a bit too much. And even then, on subsequent readings, I just found myself skipping the chapter. I read their chapter the first 3 times, but beginning on reading 4 and onwards, I don't know, I just couldn't get into it as much. If I want to see, you know, like super cool looking dudes beat up a bunch of monsters, I'll go watch He-Man. They were all cool designs, but they had little substance, so they lost 1 point. And anyone's curious how I'm ranking these characters, all characters start at 4 points. Ashara gets a 6 out of 10. Honestly, my biggest issue with this story, once more, is that with the exception of the hunters, Ashara is not the most interesting character. I really want to know more about Zara, Ninoa, and the green-haired unnamed witch with glasses. Same goes for Iuna, but Iuna's already more interesting to me. But the thing is that my big issue is that the Void Carver section was more intriguing to me than the Blade Devil section. And I don't think that was meant to be the case. If it is the case that they're just different perspectives of the story, then I'll continue with Blade Devil, and that it sounds like it's going to be a great tale. But if it really is its own story, then something is wrong here. I should not be less intrigued by the flagship character than I am by characters in what appears to be a side story or its own little story. You know, I purchased the book to see Ashara and her adventures. It just so happens that Zara and Ninoa were great. Iuna has the same ranking with Ashara as a +2 with a backstory. However, because of how she is the Witch of the Waste, I'm more intrigued by her situation. How does she become the Witch of the Waste? What is making her mind broken? How is her quarry with Ashara and Kajirok related? And her design is great, but I'm not going to go too big on design because design is very subjective. As for Zara, her relationship with Ninoa, my gosh, I misspelled it, gives her 3 points. And her internal monologue when describing Ninoa is also very interesting and made me chuckle a few times. So it gets +1 point. Ninoa gets a 9 out of 10. Strangely enough, this random character, who appears completely separate from the main story, ended up being my favorite one. Once more, her relationship with Zara gives her +3 points, and her resourcefulness gives me +1, and finally, I like Lolly, so she gets +1 again. If we remove that last bias of I like Lolly and just go with resourcefulness and her relationship with Zara, she would also be an 8 out of 10. However, that would also lower the overall score I have of the book, and I don't think that that is the case. I really believe that Ninoa is a good character that's enjoyable to watch. Now for my recommendations. Who do I recommend this to? First, you must be 18 or older. I do not think that I can legally recommend this to a minor. Reason number 2. Do not read this in public. If you are a person who reads in public, do not buy this book. If you're a person who reads it in private, I heavily recommend this insofar that you meet all the other recommendation stipulations. See the first stipulation to see why this is the case. Stipulation number 3. Nudity, blood, and gore must not be an issue. If you are someone who is easily affected by these 3 materials, do not pick this up. If you happen to be like me and are not bothered by a lot of things, then this should not be an issue to you. And finally, you must like drawn lasses. Visually, I mean. In essence, they must be aesthetically pleasing to you. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed or want to give your opinions on the book, for those of you who have read it, please comment down below, and I'll be very happy to discuss it with you. And if not, I'm curious to see what what anyone else has to say, or if maybe I inspired someone to purchase for the Second Chance campaign. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed.